Hey, good morning, y'all. I'm Bill Poutler, and this is Luisa, who we'll talk in just a second. And welcome to the Awakening and Conscious Living podcast.
We're doing 10 patterns that um, invisibly control your life. So we're going to talk last week, we talked about overthinking and how it can show up and we may not recognize it as a pattern that's controlling our life. And this week, we're talking about the pattern that a lot of us take part in, which is seeking clarity before we act. A lot of times we want certainty before we take the next step, before we move. And that shows up in a lot of different ways in our daily lives. And, it's also the reason we're talking about it is because it's one of those things that if you're not paying attention to it, you can just go on through life forever without actually recognizing that this is what you're doing and that this may be part of what's keeping you stuck. Because the truth is that certainty never comes before movement. And I think about this a lot.
Will you say that again? Because I think that was strong.
Certainty never comes before movement. It
And
just never does in any aspect of life. Um, I was going to start with a business analogy, but actually, a marriage analogy just came to mind more clearly that more people may sort of align with. A lot of times, you don't know if a relationship or if a marriage is going to work out until you're in it, until you take this step. You don't know if you are going to be able to be married to this person until you marry this person and you're in the trenches of that, you don't know if that relationship is meant for you, if that person is meant to work out for you in whatever way you process that, or whatever that means to each one of us individually until you put yourself in that situation. But what happens a lot of times in my experience, what I often see is that we don't want to make a decision about something until we have some sort of clue or until the universe comes and tells us that this is going to work out. This is meant for you. The truth is that what I've learned, especially in my awakening journey, is that even when it seems like I get a message from the universe that I should take that path or take that step, it does not mean that it's going to work out in the way that I think or want it to work out.
so you think the message from the universe was what your spirit was telling you to do, even though it wasn't going to work out because you needed that experience?
Because there was something within that experience that I needed for my spiritual growth, that I needed to learn, that I needed to experience more deeply, and standing on the sidelines and not deciding about whether or not I was going to do it wasn't going to get me that lesson, that experience, that soul level I'm meant to have.
So, soul level, do you think that, and I know this is conjecture at some level, and we really try to stay more at a practical level about conscious growth. But do you think that you pre-planned some of your lessons before you came in?
I do. My belief is that I pre-planned some of the bigger lessons before I came in. And that some of those bigger lessons, I need to take the smaller steps and learn the smaller lessons to get to some of those bigger lessons that my soul did pre-plan to come here to have.
We're going to go off subject just a little bit. So, do you think that free will comes in, plan some kind of bigger lessons before you came here because your soul wanted to experience certain things, and that listening to your inner self, your soul, if you want to call it that, um, and then choosing to move forward or not move forward with this thing that's coming up in your spirit. Is that where free will plays?
I believe so. I think that's you choosing to follow your soul path or not. That's the free will part of it. Is you at soul level, you know, it's kind of like a lot of things in life. I have a minor in project management, and I remember when I was in school putting together these really badass construction project outlines. Um, you have this plan of exactly how it's going to go, when this truck is gonna deliver what, and when these workers are gonna be there, etcetera. That delivery truck driver, he could decide that he wasn't coming to work that day. And then that means that the rest of the project now has to be managed differently. Things have to get shifted around. So that free will that construction, that driver, that truck driver had to decide whether or not he was gonna show up to work is then impacting this bigger project that some project manager already laid out was gonna go a specific way because we were gonna get certain outcomes at certain points. So that's kind of how I think about free will is, my soul sat there and made this big ass project outline for my life here for this experience. But then if I decide not to get up or if I decide not to go ahead and say yes to that proposal, then I'm not going to get married and therefore I'm not going to learn the lessons that at soul level my soul planned for me to come and have. And that sort of shifts the whole project. Right now we're scrambling, trying to figure out how else I'm going to learn those lessons, etc.
Yeah. But that also means then that, you've got free will to whether you're going to drive that truck to the job today and get up and do it or not. But all the other people involved in that project have also got free will. So I guess I'm coming back to certainty. Maybe one of the reasons there is no certainty in this world is that we can control, maybe use the word control. Don't love that word, but we can influence our progress by our decisions. But there are a lot of decisions going on around us that affect our progress also.
Yeah.
Is that
And
fair?
that's very fair. I think that's 100% accurate. And therefore, in my opinion, what we should be seeking is not certainty, but clarity.
So there is no certainty without movement. Is that what you said earlier?
That's correct.
Now we're really saying there is no clarity without movement.
That's correct.
I even like that better than certainty because there is no certainty, right?
There is no certainty. Certainty is not a thing. There are so many moving components, like you just mentioned, that, and we all have free will, that even if at, spiritual level, there's this master plan, our free will can sort of override that to an extent in a way. And therefore, the only thing we can actually seek by moving is clarity, clarity about what it is that we're meant to experience, clarity about what it is that we're meant to learn, clarity about the way the things are happening, all of those moving pieces. You can gain clarity and seek clarity about those things, but it doesn't mean that that's going to give you any certainty because the same things are still at play.
So the whole overthinking thing, some level is really about control, trying to
I think it's
control
all
your
about.
future, right? And there's no way to control our future. So, well, is there a balance between overthinking and not overthinking? I mean, we don't need to do everything just willy nilly, right?
Right. So I'm a big believer in that this, at least right now where I'm at in my experience, is that mostly everything is about balance. It is about realizing that we are in a human body as spiritual beings. So we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And therefore, the way that I look at it is I'm going to call it balanced because when I think of balance, I think 50-50, but I don't think it's 50-50 on a day-to-day level. I feel like it's maybe one day 75 and maybe one day it's 25. So maybe one day I have 75% control in terms of, I have these to-do lists all over, that's how I manage my days are with to-do lists. And some days I have 75% control over how much of that to-do list I'm going to get to do. But some days I only have 25% control over how much of that to-do list. And I use that analogy because, I believe it is my job, it is my duty in a human body perspective, in a grounded perspective, to plan. Right? Like, if I don't plan to get a new job isn't gonna just land on my lap and I'm gonna start tomorrow. There are so many steps to that getting that new job, preparing a new resume, preparing myself for these new level of interviews, preparing myself for all of these things, getting an outfit, all of the things to get to the interview, to then the process, negotiating, blah, 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 to getting the job, to actually being there. So to think that I ask for a new job and it's just gonna land on my lap, it's unrealistic, which means I have to plan. So I do have to plan. But whether or not I end up getting that job, there's so many moving parts, so many people whose intuitions and, it depends on whether they're listening to their inner knowing or not, and whether that is a part of my experience that I'm meant to have, whether how clear I am about that. so many moving pieces that I believe it's balance, understanding that it is your duty to plan. It is your duty to move. It is your duty to have an idea, an outline of where you're going, what you're doing next, with the understanding that you don't have 100% control over that. And that some days you may have 25% control over that. And other days you may only have, 25% control over that.
Sometimes the tide is high and sometimes the tide is low.
Yeah. And realizing, I think, in this invisible pattern of, trying to get clarity or trying to get certainty as a prerequisite before movement, it's really realizing that, you know, you it is your job to do the prep work, and that there's this analysis paralysis. This happens a lot. It's a thing we talk about a lot, right? This You have to realize that when you get to the point of analysis paralysis, there is something that you have lost sight of, and that is of how much control you do or do not have. Sometimes we get into this idea of faith, right? When we talk about faith, and when you think of spirituality and you think about it as, that's my faith, which I don't relate to my spirituality that way. But I know growing up in a religious environment that there's a lot of, my religion having to do relating to faith. And I think people actually use that term interchangeably. Like, what's your faith?
Oh,
When
yeah,
talking
yeah, they
about religion.
do. Never thought
Yeah.
about that, but you're right.
Yeah. But I don't relate one to the other. But what happens is that if you get really caught up into the spiritual aspect of it, into the fact that, you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and then you're like, well, I have faith that this is going to happen if I just sit here and wait for this job to land on my lap. This is not about faith, right? This is not about, misunderstanding faith. This is, to me, the way that I look at it, this is about trust. This is about self trust. This is about trusting yourself that you're walking the journey that your soul came here to walk by taking action, by moving, even when you can't see exactly where you're going. I don't know where this quote comes from, but it really stuck with me, and I'm gonna butcher it because I don't know the whole thing. But it says something along the lines of, "You don't know where you're going. Any path will take you there." And I struggled with that quote a lot internally because I was like, "Well, I don't exactly know where I'm going. I have a picture, an idea of where I wanna go, and I'm putting in the work to get there, but I also know that I don't actually know the final destination, mostly because in my experience, the final destination that I've had in mind was a lot less than what I actually ended up getting. What I ended up getting was a lot more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. But when I was thinking about that initially, it almost brought up fear because it brought up these things of certainty and clarity. It's like I have clarity in terms of where I know that I'm going because I understand that there's all these moving pieces and I understand that I don't have control over all of it and I understand all of that. There is no certainty as to whether or how I'm going to get there. And that really scared me. But what I landed on is that that is part of the journey, is that I don't know where I'm going to end up. I know the path that I'm walking. I know that I'm moving. I know that I'm taking the steps. I have the outline of that path, but I don't know where I am going to end up. And so that quote became beautiful for me in a different way than I think most people understand it. Because to me, the understanding that as long as I'm doing the work and not seeking certainty before I take the next step, then that is the journey. That is the path. That is where what I'm meant to be doing.
Going back to that faith word for just a second, which is my mom's name. She's passed, but this is my mom's name.
So,
I thought about that using faith, like as my faith is Catholicism or Christianity, but faith is not a static thing. Faith is a deep trust, movement, like you talked about, and I've said this on this show before. Jesus said, "Put both hands to the plow and don't look back," and that's movement, right? Um, that that faith just means that the ultimate outcome will be what is needed for you and for everybody else, but you've still got to walk it. and I've created a lot of stuff in my life. Okay. Time you're going to create something, you always think, well, this is how I want it to turn out. But in my whole life, nothing has ever turned out like that. So why are we still trying to control everything? I mean, it's kind of crazy, and overthinking everything into analysis paralysis and all that. But, and I know I've said this on the show too, but some of these things just continue to resonate with me. In Buddhism, they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same.
That's beautiful.
And, there's movement there also, obviously.
There is movement. Absolutely. So, in practical terms, what we can share is, always take the first step. Is there is no if you wait for certainty, you will never move. You will never move. You will always be stuck. If you wait for the right time, you will never move. You will always be stuck. Um, and you have to do whatever it takes for you to remove those boundaries because you're trying to control the outcome. That's what's happening in this invisible pattern is you are trying to take control over something that none of us have control over. And sometimes you can get the illusion that you're in control. Well, I think that happens to a lot of times. Yeah. Um, but that is an illusion that you're in control, and that may in itself be a lesson that you are learning before you realize that, if you're having these great ideas, go ahead, open that blank Word document, start typing it, vomiting it out. It doesn't need a structure right away. If you vomiting it out.
It's pretty graphic.
So graphic. Think about words though, words, vomiting out
Right,
words.
right.
Open that blank document. If you are unhappy with your career, open up a vocational page with career paths. See what resonates with you. Just start looking. You don't need to dive in like head first. You need to take the first step. And that's where clarity is going to start to become your friend. And that's where you can understand that the more you walk, the more you move, more action you take, then you start seeing the picture more clearly. Um, because there isn't a right time. There isn't a right place. In my opinion, there isn't a right person. There is the steps that you're willing to take and the path that you're willing to walk that will always guide you back to what your soul came here to experience if you are moving.
We are our right person.
We are. Yeah.
And I want to go into a deep love thing. But if we can't find ourselves as the right person, we can never get our needs met by another person in a truly balanced relationship. Everybody, both parties know they are their own right person and they join that for some reason to maybe create something that's beyond what can be just created by one person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which I would call like the Trinity per se.
Mm.
Um, there's something else I had to say about all that. Oh, but I think the core, m- I mean, a couple of the core messages that are coming out here is obviously stop overthinking. Movement brings clarity, but through this whole dialogue that we've had, these, into spiritual stuff, especially old spiritual stuff, they're talking like you have to kill your desires. And I'm completely against that. I think that you don't act on all your desires, but your desires, if you're really listening and tuned into yourself, where you need to go comes from inside, right? And the desires that you have bring you the experiences that you need to grow consciously in this lifetime. So, but you have to look at your desires with wisdom because, you know, messing around with my neighbor's wife is probably not wise desire, right? Um, and, Starting a company might be a good desire, but starting a company to make a gazillion dollars is probably not a good desire. So, uh, I think we have to look at things that come up in our heart, these desires, these feelings that we need to head in a direction. I think of each one of us like a what's the ID that you get on a computer, an IP address.
Maybe
We're
just
all like have our own IP address, right?
mhm.
Um, in this big network. Uh,
Resonance. You were talking about resonate.
Resonance. Oh, so we all resonate differently, and so we all have to bring our individual gift into the world. We're all this thread in the tapestry, and so, you've got certain missions to accomplish, not to make the world better per se, although we hope that happens, but to make your own soul better. And when you make your own soul, it's not even make your own soul better because your soul's already perfect. That's where I was going. Yes, that the wisdom that we use is to discern these desires that come up in us. Our wisdom is to help us discern the desires from a soul perspective without the conformity of the world. Okay. Right. Because the world says, start a company, make money. The world says, go find a partner and fall in love. So you've got this perfect, you can get fed by this perfect romantic Disney love. So the world tells us all these false things. The desires are right because you may desire a close relationship that helps you grow, or you may build a company that can help people, or create beautiful things into the world. And we're creators. So just even us creating is beautiful. But if we're doing it for the worldly reasons, then we're conforming to the world instead of conforming to our souls. So that's
That's
pretty big, blah, blah, blah. But
that's
anyway,
beautiful. And that beautifully ties this all together is that your desires, where do they come from? And what is causing that paralysis, that analysis paralysis? You have to question whether where they're coming from is part of that. Is it a worldly thing? Is it an ego thing? Or is it a soul level thing? And I think that will help clear up why you may not be moving. But ultimately the goal is to move. And once you have an understanding of why you're not moving, then this invisible pattern, you start taking the steps to break it.
and I think we got to go back to one more time. This overthinking, this paralysis that we have is based in fear.
Yes. What is the fear?
Right. And one of the Bible quotes I also love, not that I'm a Bible thumper, but there's a lot of wisdom out there in the Bible if you look at it in a beautiful way, in an open way. Um, but there is no fear in perfect love. And
Say
so
that again.
there is no fear in perfect love. Okay.
You're gonna have to explain that to us.
Uh, well, I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess. But if you're acting out of love,
Mm. Mm.
then you're acting out of your soul path, right? And so you have to know that this adventure, this journey that we're on, is going to have pitfalls and it's going to have problems and all that type of stuff. But nobody can take away our soul, right? Kill this body and all type of stuff. But they can't take away what's in here. So why would we be fearful?
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. We hope that this has been helpful in terms of helping you identify that invisible pattern of seeking certainty before movement. We hope that you've been able to understand where you're getting stuck and what you can do to move forward.
Beautiful. And I want to say, and I think Luisa would agree with me, I've said this on the show before too, namaste, because the word namaste means the divide in me honors the divide in you. So I think Luisa and I both say the divine in us honors the divine in y'all. And thank you for watching. And send us some comments. Tell us we're stupid. Just say anything to us, please.
We're open to it.
We're open to
Thank
it.
you, and until next time.
If you're waking up, questioning everything, and trying to reconnect with who you truly are, I wrote this book for you. It's a guide to remembering your divine nature, healing old conditioning, and stepping into inner sovereignty. If that resonates, check out the link below, www.atobook.com.